What's dangerous is when the universe pick you and you put on the magic glasses. There's rules that go with them. You can never take them off. You never see things as they're supposed to be. You see things as they are. And you can never force nobody else to wear them.
Light diffused.
You see, I take these glasses off. She looks like a regular person, doesn't she, huh? Put them back on, formaldehyde face.
I've got one that can see.
When 20 or 30 cars are hazing you on the freeway behind you, in front of you, on both sides of you, completely controlling how fast you go, whether you exit, whatever you do. This is something bigger than that. I started spray painting their cars on the freeway. I pepper sprayed them. At this time, it was trying to get them to call the police. That's what I was trying to do. I had no other way, I felt like, other than to find out, are these people together? Are they working in this one collective group for the same reason? I believe it was the very next day, and it was the first time I experienced what I know now is called street theater. And I watched the parking lot literally fill up with cars. And, you know, heterosexual couples would hold hands and like stroll through the back of the parking lot like they were on some 1950s sitcom. People that are trying to look incredibly normal look incredibly abnormal because they're acting. It's not authentic. That was when I first started thinking, it's all of them against me. This is clearly a collective, organized, whatever is happening.
If a conspiracy is a bunch of people working together to do something that they don't want publicized, then it would be absolutely wrong to say that the world is not filled with conspiracies.
Okay, so now you hear how he mentioned that people would hold hands and you know, stroll through the park like they were in some old time love story. Like literally, that's what we've witnessed. I mean, what would happen is anything that we were suffering through, society would exaggerate it in our face to make us feel either guilty or, you know, bad about our situation. So just to give you an example, at one point we were homeless and we were literally sleeping in our car at one point. And this was at a point to where we were low on funds and we really didn't have food. We would have people pull up to us, or we'd pull up to restaurants where people were, and you look over at them and they'd be in their car eating their food and their French fries, but they do it in such an exaggerative way. Like I said, any other time you wouldn't notice it. And not to say that we're only noticing it because we were hungry. That wasn't it. You know, I'm wise enough to know the difference between something when someone is just, you know, enjoying a meal or when it just looks like crazy, you know. And I assure you, man, people would eat their foods and it just didn't look right. Like it was like they were over exaggerating. Like I don't know if you guys ever saw that first what was it, that first AI video of Will Smith eating those French fries? Like, I mean, that's kind of what it looked like to me. It looked crazy. And then we began to see those same patterns with other things. I remember we had been talking in our home a lot about, you know, taking the kids one time to go see the Super Mario Brothers. But at the time, you know, I don't know what was happening. Maybe, I think we could afford it, but we just hadn't taken them yet. And I remember being out with my kids and this couple pops out in front of us. One of their kids is dressed like Mario. And I just so happened to, at the time, I was kind of in between who was involved and who wasn't. So I asked them, the family, hey, you got, you know, I looked at the kids, so you just saw Mario. And the wife was just overly exaggerating it, like, oh my God, it was so awesome. Like, I mean, it's just little things that I would notice that just would seem out of place. It just did not seem natural. It seemed fake. And that's the only way I could put it, you know. And I'm not going to say everything seemed that way because, you know, I come to find out that a lot of people who participate in this are doing it for reasons that they feel are justified, because whatever, like the guy said, whatever narrative they are giving and whatever, you know, whatever they're saying to justify whatever that they've convinced society into doing to do you this way, it has to be believable. And what's funny is the same thing he said in that video was like, there must be something they're telling these people that just talks about how much of an immoral, you know, worthless type of person you are, because that's the only thing that I could think of that would gain that many people in a community or even across state lines to actively get together and do a person like that, or family with children. See, and there were times that they would try to play little manipulative games with me and try to get me to believe that it was because of me and something I've done, and they're doing it in care of the kids. But then I beg the question, what about the times that we were constantly getting sick for 6 months straight, back after back after back after back? Like, what was that about? I mean, it wasn't something that it was just affecting me. It was affecting my children. Or what about when my youngest daughter was born and my wife strangely came home from the hospital sick and ended up causing my 1-week-old daughter to get sick. And I'm talking seriously sick, which then ended up getting the entire family sick in one home around a 1-week-old newborn baby, which eventually we had to, of course, take to the emergency room because it had gotten so bad. I mean, things that didn't make any sense, and I hate bringing that up because it's saddening to me to even consider that. But I remember what took place at that hospital, and I remember watching all of the nurses. No one seemed to be sick. No one were wearing masks at this point in time, because I think this was back in 2023. So it was just a little odd to me that my wife came home with this cough immediately upon getting discharged from the hospital. Especially during the same time, everything in our life was being sabotaged around us. Yeah, man, like it's been wild, and I always mention to people about my employment. This has been a big one for me, and I've tried to tell people what's been going on for so long, but I don't know just how much people understands or believes what I'm telling them. And so let's just say this. So I became aware of this, like, in the beginning of the video, like I stated, I became aware of this when the person, or the female who was watching our family, stated that, who she worked for. And it was at that point I started to become aware of, what's going on. And then there are people actively, engaging, in surveillance in my family. But I was still, obviously I'm a father, I needed work. So I was still looking for work and trying to find jobs, to provide for my family. But what was happening was, once I would get into the job, literally within the first month, things would start to happen that seemed out of order, And I mean, there was the one job where I worked with a bunch of girls. I'd gotten a job as a leasing agent at a community in Avondale, Arizona, and I was working around a bunch of girls. And one of the girls one day just had an issue with me because she felt that one of the people that had came in to lease was a friend of hers, and that I was trying to steal her lease. Now, understand this, I just met this girl. So when she confronted me about it, she literally yelled at me like a child. Like I'm not talking like she raised her voice. Like this female yelled at me. And it took me by such surprise when eventually, out of nowhere, they called me into the office wanting to have a meeting. Now, keep in mind, I'm saying 1 month. I don't even know if I was there a month. It was like a month. And I expressed to the manager, like, look, this female just yelled at me like I'm a child. And the manager proceeded to actually take up for the girl, And when I saw that, literally, I got up, I walked out, and I never looked back at that job again. Then I ended up getting another job in leasing, And at this point, they ended up sitting me next to another young lady who, look, I'm not going to go into what she did. I'll just say I was sitting next to this young lady who was allegedly dating one of the guys that worked on property. And all day long, all I heard was their escapades, what they did in the model apartment. And what was odd enough about it is the manager promoted it. I literally remember the manager getting into these conversations and telling this girl that, yeah, when I was young, I was wild. If you do what you got to do. If you got to do it in the model, like it was insane. Like of course I have to take care of my family. So I'm just kind of taking all this in like, this is the craziest thing I've ever heard. And then it became where they would try to lure me into talking with females, what they didn't understand is that at that time I was already aware of things and I wasn't really saying things. So I would kind of, keep my composure and wouldn't really reveal that I knew that they were all full of it. So I would kind of go along with it. And it got to a point to where I think in the beginning of the video, I expressed that there was a legal matter that had taken place out in Arizona. One of the legal matters involved a misdemeanor charge that I was charged with, that I was wrongfully charged with, that I fought heavily. And I had an issue with the officers because they had lied on me. And then the other one involved an ex-employer. FedEx, they were also a legal battle that I had at that time in my life. But all of that's public record, so anyway, but one of the officers that I'd had an issue with in that particular misdemeanor charge. Now, I know they were trying to convince me it's just a misdemeanor charge. Why are you fighting it so much? And like I told them, it was not the fact that it's a misdemeanor charge, it's the principle. You guys lied on me. That's why I'm fighting it. So I'm at work one day, and this officer, it's in the morning before we had opened up the building, and his officer somehow knew where the side door was where we would enter as employees. He went straight to it, And when I opened the door myself, and I noticed that when he knocked at the door, nobody wanted to get the door. Everybody kind of waited, and I was like, just naturally, I motioned towards the door to open it. And when I opened it, it's this police officer in this city that I had an issue with. And he looks at me and immediately, okay, I'm at work. My assistant manager's behind me. Immediately, I wanted to say something to this guy, like really, but he initiated the conversation first, like, oh, don't I know you? And I looked at him and I was like, I don't think I know you at all. And he looks back like, no, I know you from somewhere, don't I? Where do I know you from? And at that point, the manager looks over at me and goes, I don't know, Leonard, should I be concerned? Like, it was just a weird situation. But to make a long story short, I ended up leaving that job because I found out that it was all a sham. And what they were trying to do was set me up there as well. And I mean, I can get into a lot more that happened with the job, how they tried to stiff us with an apartment bill deliberately that we didn't charge, that we didn't, for damages that we didn't do. I mean, I can get into a lot of it, but I'm just going to leave it at that. It was crazy. And eventually things just got worse and worse and worse. So, one of the reasons I play the video is because I want, you guys to understand that this is something that's happening, and when I tell people that my jobs have been sabotaged, I'm not just making this up as some excuse because things didn't work out. No, jobs don't work out. There are many people out there who are not going through this and jobs just don't work out. But when I tell you that it went from just being set up to just literally being poisoned on jobs, and I mean what I am telling you. After I had left my job at FedEx, I had gotten a job as a driver with one of these companies. And one day I was working, I was delivering construction parts to construction sites, and I would go pick up parts and things like that. And I would deliver these parts to the construction sites. And one particular day, I noticed that I had a pile set up for me already to deliver, but it was a very small pile. It was weird. It was like this long piping that would go underground. This metal, it looked to me metallic pipe. And a couple of other things. So I debated because I was used to picking things up on a forklift to just give an idea of how much weight I would have to deliver some days. And this day it was barely nothing. So I decided to pick the pipe up with my gloves because it was easy and put it on the back of the truck, which is fine. So I get my itinerary. I head out on my route, and this was maybe about 5:30, 6 in the morning because we started about 5:30, and I'd get off sometime maybe 2, 3. I can't remember, but. Halfway through the day, I get this itch in the back of my neck, right? And I take my glove off and I feel the back of my neck, and it's just broken out everywhere. And I didn't understand this. I'm thinking what? It freaked me out. It was so bad. And I remember I had a couple of hours left for work, and I remember I got off, I went straight home, and I asked my wife to look at it, and she's looking at it like, what is that? And I'm like, I don't know, because I didn't really understand what it was, but it was spreading. It was spreading. I can't remember how far it spread, but I believe it spread all the way from my neck up to my face. It was pretty bad. And I go to the doctor, and the doctor looks at it and immediately says it's toxic. It's contact dermatitis. It looks like you've come in contact with toxic nickel. And for the life of me, I could not figure out how that happened. You know what I mean? Like, how did I come in contact with something like that? You know what I mean? Like, okay, so the way I see it is this company has been around for years. This isn't a newly established company. So if you guys are seasoned, invested in delivering construction parts to sites, then you should know when you are asking someone to handle something that's that toxic. I mean, because the way I broke out, it was like the moment you touch it and touch anything else, it's going to damage your skin severely. Thank God I didn't touch my eyes with it. And when I brought it up to the boss, my manager, the first thing he said was, SHIT happens, or blank happens. You know what I mean? Blank happens. And I couldn't even believe that was his response, and he apologized for it, but his response was there was zero empathy there was no concern in his response. And of course, not only that, I'd already been people were trying to drive me off the road when I was doing my deliveries, and I was even fighting through that, so it wasn't nothing for me to quit. Boom. I left that job. I'm thinking like, okay, whatever. So to avoid and I ended up getting a job as a driver with Amazon. And we'll just leave it at that. I don't even want to go there, but I ended up, to avoid all of this traps and things that were happening to me, I decided to see if I can get a job at home. I felt that would be a bit safer, and, things would be a lot easier on me. So I get a job with a temp agency. I'm not going to say whose names it is, because I know how things are. So I'm just going to tell you guys a story that I've told everybody and that I've emailed everyone about, like, true story. And the job consisted of me actually booking hotels for a major hotel chain. So what ended up happening was they provided me a computer, a headset similar to this, and most of the things that I needed to do the job. And I had my own computer, but I wasn't going to use my computer for that. So within the first month, I think I must have done this for about a month and a half, because I think 60 days was the time frame before you would move up you could be considered permanent, or you could move up to permanent. And right before that time frame happened, I remember, one of the guys who was managing me, he had did this one-on-one with me about, just checking up to see where I was, and we did this video, meeting. And in his video, I could see where he had paperwork of people who were also, he were also in charge of, and you could see where he had the top role players, who the top people who were actually doing the best in his particular group of people. And I could visibly see my name was at the top, and which was surprising, because I'm thinking, like, has he got that there on purpose? But I remember one of the things he said to me that struck me, and it wasn't what he said, it was the way he said it. He goes, "Leonard, I'm going to be honest. I like you, like, I personally think you're doing good. I think you're great at what you do, and that's kind of how he stated his appreciation for my work ethics, but it was the whole "I personally" that kind of struck me. You know what I mean? It just was weird. It's like, well, who's saying different? Like, it's one of those things. But anyway, about a week after that, I'm sitting on the computer and I'm, doing my thing. I'm booking a hotel, and I'm speaking with this lady from another country. I can't remember where she was from, because we did book hotels for other countries. And out of nowhere, literally out of nowhere, I feel what seemed to me like a numbing in my head. This is the best way I can describe it. It felt like a numbing in my head. And I'm trying to talk through this as I try to book this hotel for this lady, but she's being really confusing, and just being odd. You know, she's being really odd. That's all I can say. But I'm trying to talk through this feeling I'm having in my head. But it was getting worse, and it was just intensifying and intensifying and intensifying to a point to where I literally felt, and this is the best way I can describe it. It felt like every thought that I had in my head had been ripped out instantly. Like, it sounds crazy, but this is the only way I can explain it. Like, there was a white fog beam, something that had shot into my head, and I could not even muster up the next sentence to speak. And the ladies on the phone, when I got silent, the ladies on the phone being oddly anxious. Are you there? Hello? Hello? Are you there? Hello? Like, this is how she's acting at this point in time where I'm feeling this, whatever I'm feeling in my head. And I had something within me said, speak very slowly until you can get off this phone. And I said, ma'am, and this is, I tried to say it as slow as I can because I was having trouble even gaining a thought. Even getting a thought out to reply to this lady. I said, ma'am, give me 1 second and I'll be right back with you. And she goes, okay. And I got off the phone. I took the headset off and I put it down, and I kind of leaned back in my desk and looked at it. Now I'm looking at my computer because I had already been feeling little odd sensations before, but I was ignoring them because they never got to that point. But I'm looking at the computer, the headset, and like I would lean up in my chair, and the closer I got to the headset, guys, like it was as if it was shooting out some type of energy force that I could physically feel the closer I got to it. As God be my witness, this is the truth. I called my wife in the room and I said, because you could feel the energy in the room, like there was an energy in the room. So I called my wife in the room and I said, hey, babe, stand here and tell me what you feel. And she looks around and she goes, what is that? I do feel that. Like there was a heaviness in the room. And I said, okay, I wanted her to get out because I didn't want her to be affected by it. So, good. I just wanted to know if you felt what I'm feeling. I ended up finishing up that day. I emailed the staff immediately. I'm like, listen, I don't know what you guys have given me, but I'm going to return everything that I have right now. And if I cannot get another computer, I'm done with this job immediately. You know, at this point in my life, I have no concerns telling you how I feel. You know, I'm not going to be rude or disrespectful, but I'm just at that point in my life to where this is what it is. This is what it is. So they agreed to send me another headset and computer. You know, they mentioned that, well, you're going to be off the next couple of days, but it might even take an additional day to get, your equipment mailed to you if we're going to send it to you. I said, it doesn't matter. I'll take the day off. Just get me another computer and I'll send this back. So I ended up taking it back to them and they sent me another computer. However, the next day, like I said, I had the day off. So I have a habit. I get up in the morning and I pray with my family. This particular morning, I gather all my children and we begin to pray. Out of nowhere, I began to slur with my prayer. Like I had a list, like it was freaky and it was an uncontrollable slur. Like it freaked me out so bad. I looked at my wife. I said, babe, I'm slurring. And I could not control it. Like, you guys got to understand this. I could not control it. And I'm thinking to myself, and there was this tingle that kind of remained in my head. It was like this staticky tingle that was apparent, that remained in my head. And I told them then, I said, if I get another computer from you guys, I wish I could say the name of this company, but I won't. If I get another computer from you guys and this happens and this commences for even a second, I'm done. I just expect that. You know what I mean? And sure enough, I got the computer. But before that, I want you to know, I was off for about 3.5 days, 3 to 4 days. As each day went by, I got better and better until it didn't happen anymore, until I was back to normal. But it took that tingle in my head feeling about a month before it dissipated and I didn't feel it anymore. But when I got the equipment again, true indeed, it started to happen immediately again. I was done. I unplugged it. I didn't even finish my day. It was a wrap. Send me my check. Sayonara. I just have nothing else to say to you. They ended up sending me my check. I'm not going to get into what they did with the check number, this weird number. They sent me my check. I'll say it. They sent me my check, and I'd added up the number of my check, and it was like a certain type of number that I expected. But they ended up giving me more than I was supposed to get. But it was just the coded number that the check was that just threw me for a loop. But again, that's what happened. Like I said, I can't explain exactly what happened and what went down and why that happened, but it happened, and it scared the crap out of me at the time. So again, at this point, I'm thinking, I don't know how am I going to get around this? What am I going to do that I'm going to be able to provide for my family? And then it became where the neighbors would move around us. Now we would have neighbors, and this is happening to this day, by the way. We have neighbors who will move around us, and I'm not going to say it's happening to the degree it was happening. There's more of a surveil, watch, mildly electronic harass type thing going on now. But the neighbors that moved below us at this point when this happened with this computer, they were aggressive. I mean, they were this Jamaican family, and I mean, they were doing everything they could to start fights with us. They were so rude, loud, and disrespectful. And anytime we confronted them, it became a problem. I remember, and then not only that, our leasing office was trying to play us against each other. They were trying to play us against each other because we went in the office one time and complained about something, but we found out later by the people below us that the maintenance guys had went and complained and said we were complaining about them, and we had never even done that. So I go to the neighbor below us, and I'm talking to him about, I can't remember what I went to talk to him about. This dude starts crying. I'm a black man, so I'll be honest with you. It kind of threw me for a loop because this dude must have been like 6'5", and I'm talking to him, and the dude starts crying. Said, you guys said something about us and it really hurt us, And like, I had never seen that before, from another man to a man. So I was kind of taken back, like, bro, like, you don't cry. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry. What did we do? Like, they're lying. First off, like, we didn't do that, but I don't know. I don't know if this dude was just a great actor or what, but it was odd, to say the least. But we found out that the leasing managers was trying to play us against each other, or some of them. And it seems like the maintenance guys were involved in it as well, but I mean, it got wild with these people, no matter what we did. Like, I actually had to call the police on them one time because it got that bad. When I called the police, right, the police told me that those people had called the police on us over 15 times. Now consider this. We are a family of 4 by this time, because I think we had just had our youngest. And what in the world is a family of 4 who are already under pressure by the world? What are we doing? But I found out later they were trying to set up a narrative in anticipation of something in the future so they can have something to fall back on and go, look, we had to call, but it never got to that point, And I'm going to give you another example of just how bad this was. So one day my youngest one had gotten sick and we had to call the paramedics. Apparently in Arizona, when you call the paramedics, the police have to show up if it involves an infant child. So we're sitting in our house waiting on the paramedics, right? And I'm sitting there, and out of nowhere, the door bust open. Actually, one of my daughters was at the door, and the door bust open, and she had to move out of the way. And it's this police officer just walking up in our house like he owned it. Like, look, like he owned the house. Like, boom, and a cocky as all get up, like he owned the house. Now I'm sitting back looking at this dude, like, dude, what's up with you, man? Like, you just walk up in people's houses like this. So he walks up in the house, and I'm at this point, he's just popping his gum like this bowl. I said, look, man, I'm gonna ask you to get out. I'm not moving anywhere. Like, I mean, Bo, I'm not moving anywhere. I'm like, listen, man, you just walked up in the house. I don't have to go anywhere. Right now, we're here because we are required to be here because you called the paramedic. Let's just focus on your child. I mean, just nasty. So I'm in the closet in front of this dude. This dude sticks his foot out and puts his body in front of me and starts to push me in my own home. You're a joke. You're a joke. I mean, bro, listen, it took all of the God in me not to allow these police officers to do what I knew they were trying to do. It took all of the God in me. Imagine any man out there, right? Imagine you're in your home, you call the paramedics for your sick baby. A cocky police officer barges in your home before the paramedics, and proceeds to push you around and call you names in your own home. That's what happened. Now, later, I realized that they were trying to get a reaction out of me because I was so upset. I was talking to him. I was back and forth in the kitchen. My wife was trying to hit me to calm down. I'm like, babe, I was so pissed off at that point, man. It was crazy. And eventually I was like, all right, I listened to my wife. I was like, all right, I'm going to calm down and I'm going to let this one go. But man, I focused on my daughter. We ended up going on a paramedic ride. And again, as God always does, he brought her through whatever little moment she was having at this particular time. But later I found out that the goal was to push me to a point where they know most men would lose their stuff, right? They know that they would have done the same thing in hopes that I did something so irrational, it would give them a reason to arrest me or worse. That's what I later found out is why they did that, because that's the only other reason that they would do something like that, you know. But again, we had to brush that off, and it got to the point eventually they ended up evicting us from that home. And this is when we went on our journey across the United States, and we were followed across every state line we entered. And what would happen is that when we would pass certain exits, the cars that were following us would get off, right? And then as we approached an on-ramp, the new set of tailors would get on. And that's how it would happen throughout the counties. And I believe they did this in coercion with, I'm gonna assume, I don't know. I mean, I got an idea how they did this, but for the sake of not triggering any flags in this video, I'm not going to point fingers at anybody because I know how that works. But I know exactly who did it and I know how they did it, you know. But that's what they would do. And this followed us all the way to Florida, Tennessee, Arkansas, through every single state that we traveled through. And one would ask, how in the Lord's world and why are people investing in my family to that degree to where they would be willing to do this to us across the state? But I tell you, no lies, this is what they did to us. You know, so look, this is my first video. Obviously, we've been through a lot. There's a lot of things that I can say, but one of the things I don't want to do is I want to get these things out there now so I can move on to other things in future videos. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to bombard you know, my channel with this, you know, which is the reason I started it off to this degree. You know, I just kind of want to put it out there what we have been through. We've been homeless twice. We've had our pride attacked. We've had my position as a man, as a husband, as a father has tried to be severely destroyed. They have tried to pin me and my wife against each other. And it took me a while. It got to a point to where I'm always steadily trying to figure out who this is, because the reason, and a lot of people say just move on with your life, and you get a lot of people who I think are part of this stuff too, because when I realize how much of society is a part of it and how many people in society participate in this, you always hear people say things like, well, just focus on the good part in life. But here's what and this is the same thing I've told other people. When you're sitting in your home, right, and you have people who are hitting you with some type of electronic device that's aiming a frequency at you that can penetrate walls, hit you in the body, cause muscle spasms, cause reddening of the eyes, damaging of the eye vessels, that can cause headaches, that can cause all kinds of things. Like when you're dealing with people who have been planted next to you to mess with you 24/7 and hit you with beams and all kinds of things that can penetrate walls. All it takes is a Google search. It's this stuff exists. So you're never able to forget what's happening to you. So when people ask, why can't you just move on and just focus on the good things in life? It's because I'm always reminded. Every time when I'm even trying to relax in my own home, these people are doing these things to us. And how long has this been happening? The duration of 4 full years. 4 full years. They even figured out ways to do it in hotels. Look, I don't really know. It's hard, man. Like it's hard to express because I have so much to say, and I haven't even touched the surface of the things that we've been through. My poor wife, my children, the shelters, the things we've had to go through. Because see, when you're in a shelter and when you're vulnerable, they really attack you. They really attack you. And when you realize that they have street level people who are involved in this, wealthy people, the stores, the restaurants, like the people you work, like it's like literally a world that does not exist until a button has been activated and everybody suddenly wakes up and it's like, he's the target. Action. That's literally, because I never knew this existed in this world. I never knew this. And again, if I had done something, I would understand the surveilling. I'm going to say this. I agree. If you suspect someone of committing a crime, surveil, watch them, be a little snoopy, see what they're up to. But once you find out that that person isn't committing any crimes or isn't doing anything, then you must let that case go. The only reason I believe that people continue on in this is, I don't know. I mean, it blows your mind to assume that human beings would want to witness the destruction of a family, but again, I can say I got an idea where this came from, but for the protection of my own environment, I'm going to just keep that to myself. And again, I don't want anybody saying that I'm slandering them because, again, plausible deniability is what this program is based on. If you can't prove it, you can't speak on it. But that's going to fade out very soon in this program. The same thing happened with, MK Ultra and COINTELPRO. It was a conspiracy until it came out and they admitted that it was going on. So look, in the future, I'm going to try to keep my videos 20 minutes minimum. If it extends into 25 minutes, obviously it's because I had some good stuff to talk about. But I don't want to, again, bombard my videos with just this. Because true indeed, if you can imagine 5 years of dealing with this constantly, I got a lot to say. And one of the reasons that I wanted you guys to see the video in the beginning was because I want you guys to see just how bad this is and how much this affects people. If you saw, there were people going to support groups for this type of stuff. Support groups for something that, I mean, come on now. And based on my observation, there are so many people involved in this. I mean, there are so many people involved in this that participates in this. It's mind blowing. Like, listen, when I tell you America's infrastructure seems to be invested in this stuff, I mean just that. I mean that no place you go, not one place we've ever went didn't seem to be affected. Not one place. And if it wasn't affected when we got there, something transpired after we left and returned to that location to where it was then activated almost 95% of the time. And I mean everywhere we go. So in the beginning of the video, when I said the magic glasses, Dick Gregory knew exactly what he was talking about. He knew what he was talking about. And the reason I wanted to put focus on that title was because you never see things as they're supposed to be. After this, you see everything as they are. And you can never force anybody else to see what you're seeing. Like, you got to understand how powerful that statement is. How powerful. When the universe picks you, you don't know until you know. You don't know until you know, man. And my, oh my, was that a powerful statement, because I have tried to convince people, my own loved ones, what was happening. And every single time without fail, they can't even muster the might to understand, is this really happening? I honestly think it's personally that it scares them. It scares them somewhat. No way can it be this bad. No way can it be this bad. How is it possible? No way. You're exaggerating. It's not that. It's spiritual. And I believe all things are spiritual. Everything is spiritual. We are spiritual beings, even the bad ones. We're spiritual beings. But humans are actively doing this, deliberately assisting in the destruction of the human soul, deliberately, because they have been fed some type of lie that this person is this kind of person and this person is that kind of person. But you look at all of the people going through this, from doctors, whistleblowers. So all of a sudden, all these prestigious people have fallen from grace to such a degree. Now their reputations are all to crap, and it's believable. But then you inject money in the scenario and incentives in the scenario, and then you really see the nature of the human heart. This is my first video. And as I told you guys, there's going to be a lot of mistakes. There's going to be a lot of, there's going to be a lot of mistakes. I might even say some things that, you guys might consider wasn't the best thing to say. I might say something that, and at any time I say something wrong, I don't mind being, I don't mind constructive criticism. Hey, man, you might want to look at it in a different way, or I didn't agree with that. I'm totally fine with that, because I'm a child of God, just like everybody else here. And in no means am I perfect. We're not designed to be perfect, and I can be emotional just like the next person, and I can make mistakes just like the next person. In fact, I have made mistakes. I've made many mistakes, things that I regret in life, decisions that I regret. And I've just things that I regret, that I've done or that I've said, or moves that I've made that I seriously regret. I wish I could go back in time at times and change things around and do things differently. But then I ask myself, well, then I ask myself, well, how would I be then? Would I be a different person? Would I be the person that I am today? You know what I mean? Like, would I be who I am right now? And it's like the butterfly effect, the movie with Ashton Kutcher. You might take one thing away, but you're going to lose something else. So I guess what I can say is all the roads that I've walked throughout my life, I'm grateful for them. And I never want to say I'm grateful for what I've experienced through this, but I can say throughout this experience, it's changed me. I'm still disappointed with human nature. Like, I still see people out and about following me, and I'm still like, hey, you need to get your heart right with God, man, because what you're doing, I'm going to always be that person. You know what I mean? But there's so much that's changed in me, and God has allowed me to see this side of the world that I don't know why. There are some people that it takes out. There's people who have been put through this and they've committed suicide. They've shot up locations. There's a lot of people who've been put through this, and you see these people out in the street and the world is calling them crazy. That's a lot of people. I'm not going to say who and what, because I don't know, but this is part of what this program is designed to do. Or you do something foolish and you end up locked up in prison. In that case, you're no longer a threat. Program ends. And in some cases, it might even extend the prisons, because you'd be surprised, or maybe you won't, what the prisoners would do for commissary, you know. But I thank you guys for listening to my video. You know, there are other platforms that I'll be on as well. You know, I was considering things like TikTok and stuff like that, but I'll be honest with you, I've been kind of scrolling through TikTok over the last couple of months. TikTok is a weird realm. TikTok is like, TikTok is strange. You know, at my age and you know, being a family man, I question if I want to be a part of all that fakery. You know, like it's just fake. I'm gonna be honest with you. There's a lot of stuff that's just fake. I don't want to inject myself in the midst of a bunch of overly false excitement where people are doing to get likes and things. I want you guys to see I'm natural. I'm real. Like, I'm not trying to be something that I'm not. You know, I've never been able to be a fake person. What you see is what you get, and anything that needs to be perfected in that, I'm always willing to take care of those things. I'm not saying I'm going to be comfortable in my wrong. So if what you see is wrong in me, those things need to be addressed, and I will address those things. But I just can't see myself being a fake person. So I do have links and things at the bottom where you guys can kind of follow me on other pages and things like that. And, you know, again, as this channel progresses, I look forward to where this channel is going, because I do consider this not your average everyday ministry channel. Like, we're going to have some fun. Like, this is going to be different. You know what I mean? And that's my goal is to, you know, be different, but at the same time, glorify God's kingdom. I don't want to take it too far away from, you know, the kingdom by trying to be, you know, too different, you know, because there's still a purpose here. But man, I just want you guys to just kind of go on this journey with me, you know. And I do, like I said, I understand that I'm not going to build followers in one day, in 4 months, 6 months. You know, this takes a while, you know, but I assure you guys it will be well worth it, you know, because I'm going to be learning along with you guys. And to all family and friends out there who might come across this page and want to know what's going on in my life, well, this is how you're going to do that, you know. So follow along. You know, hit the like button if any of these videos are something that you kind of connect with and you like, and don't hit the like button if you don't like them. You know what I mean? And that's it. You know, I hope, again, my goal right now is to post at least twice a week. You know, hopefully, you know, I can keep up with that starting off. I think twice a week is a fair number. You know, it's easy to keep up with right now for myself. I do have a lot of other things going on. Again, I can't tell you guys that a lot of the things we've experienced has stopped. I got to admit, it is currently going on right now as we speak. But that's just me speaking the reality of what's going on. You know, but again, I do think in the future that the content that I am going to put out, I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. I think it's something a lot of you guys are going to relate to. And I think you guys are going to have fun, you know, and I look forward to it as well, because, again, this has been a long time coming. I was supposed to start this channel way back in 2022, 2021. And because of the circumstances in our life, I was never able to get it up and running. But here we are now. And again, it doesn't really matter what happens in the future. Rather we're here, rather they try to uproot us from our home again, or rather we end up relocating, the channel is going to follow. You know, so this journey is going to be a lifelong, this journey is going to be a journey of our family, our struggles, and what we go through, no matter what situation we're in, you know, because I think it's good for the world to witness what's going on. You know, I think it's good for you guys to see and know in detail, because nobody's going to tell my story or our story like it should be told. When you're hearing it from someone else, you already know how that works. You tell one person something, by the time it passes 50 miles, you're an entirely different person. You're a monster. You know what I mean? And, you know, so I'm going to prevent that from happening by putting my own story out there, so people can have a resource to go to for the truth, and not just relying on what they're hearing and the lies they're being told by somebody in a high position. You know what I mean? Because, again, my thing is this: a lot of people get the jobs they have because they're sacrificing their own soul and their own morality to do what they're doing. And that's when you get the big bucks. America don't pay people good for nothing. You know, you got to sacrifice something to get paid well in this country, and that's just what it is. But anyway, I thank you guys for joining. Look forward to my next video, and we'll be back up and running soon. God bless you. Peace be with you all. Stay tuned.